committee appointments, Allison Henderson, planning board, open for motion.
Move to appoint Allison Henderson to the planning board. Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Next. Public comment, and for those who haven't been to one of our meetings before, this is not where we'll talk about the wastewater treatment plant. You'll all have an opportunity to say what you'd like to say once we get to that item. But if there's anyone who would like to speak to something not on the agenda, that's what this public comment section is for. So is there anyone here or online who has something they'd like to talk about not on the agenda? Going once. Going twice. Oh. Alright, new business. EMS bad debt write-off. Open for motion.
Make a motion to approve writing off $16,188.52 in uncollected EMS debt into send same to the collection agent.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. New business license application, Plain Goods located at 54 Water Street, open for motion.
I make a motion to approve the business license for Plain Goods located at 54 Water Street.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Community Center Sign Award, open for motion.
I make a motion to award the community center sign bid to Neocraft for $42,431.48 as recommended by the town manager and Parks and Recreation's director.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion? Should we know that 20,000 of this is from a donation?
20,000, this is from a donation.
Thank you for that. Very kind. Any others?
I belong to cars, I should also specify that as well.
Alright, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Budget carry forward requests, open for motion.
Make a motion to approve the fiscal year 25 budget carry forward request as recommended by the town manager.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Alright. Municipal officers order, open for motion.
Make a motion to approve the municipal officer's order to place 3 questions on a special town meeting warrant for a November 4, 2025 secret ballot referendum.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0, excuse me. Special town meeting warrant, open for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the special town meeting warrant for a November 4, 2025 secret ballot referendum.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. FAA grant award, open for motion.
Make a motion, be it ordered that the Wiscasset Select Board hereby supports the submission of that certain grant agreement with the United States of America, Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration as identified by AIP Grant 3-23-0049-031-2025 with a date of offer of August 21, 2025, the grant agreement. And authorizes Dennis Simmons in his capacity as town manager to execute the grant agreement on behalf of the town of Wiscasset. The grant agreement is made pursuant to the Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program and is for $585,000.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any questions or discussion?
I did not write that, by the way, I was required by the FAA.
Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 4-0. Alright, special request for further discussion regarding the relocation of the wastewater treatment plant. Is my understanding that at least one of you has a presentation, is that correct, Shannon?
Yeah.
Okay, so, if we could do this, if you would like to make your presentation first, I would like to respond as I've got all the letters and things that have been handed out and I've reviewed the website. And then anyone who would like to speak after that is more than welcome to. We will handle it the same way we do with public comment. You'll each have 5 minutes. If everybody goes through and people would like to say more than that, you're welcome to go again, but I wanna make sure everyone has an opportunity to say what they'd like to say before folks go for a second time.
Is it possible to sneak this podium out front here?
Do you need the podium?
I do have,
Okay,
something, because it's a formal presentation, I do have
okay.
an outline I'd like to follow, so I kind of need to put it down. I don't need it when I'm or anything like that, I just need it for this.
But I would ask you to bring it as close to that microphone as we can, so that people also hear you. Yeah.
So can you hear?
What we need to need will be sneak it over here, so that I'm not, when I'm standing back to people, that's okay. And you, that's looks like a fun little long, that's it. We got it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
Yeah. So if, and you want me to do it, because this owl here will be.
no, it's that piece actually, so Elisa, if you could just slide it.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, but this is,
The camera, but that's the mic that's gonna catch.
There's two more.
Yeah.
This one.
So thank you for allowing us to come and share our concerns tonight. I did prepare a formal presentation because I wasn't sure exactly how this was gonna go. And I somehow ended up being tapped to be the one to present all of this. So if my legs start shaking, there's a good reason for that. Is Allbird with us this evening?
There.
They're online.
Okay, perfect. I want to thank them for being here as well. So I've structured this in a way that hopefully,
Sorry. You're making squeaky noises. That's it.
yeah, chair again.
so hopefully, I can make sure that we're addressing issues that they can comment on. So that they don't have to be stuck here for the whole thing if they don't want to be. I do have some handouts that I've provided for people to reference. The reason for that will be kind of clear as we move through. And I'll bring up those references as we move along. So part of the reason for this is I know that there are a lot of people, and I know Dennis, you have referenced the fact that there's a lot of misinformation in the community. So some of that, the purpose of this is to try to dispel some of the misinformation for people. And I feel like the misinformation is kind of moving on both sides. It's misinformation for those of us who do not want it in the current proposed location, but also misinformation from those that do. So one of the first pieces of misinformation that we have come across is that the current sewer treatment facility is failing. And I do believe that that is an incorrect statement, but a lot of people have, when we've talked about our opposition to this, have said, well, then we're just gonna end up with the wastewater treatment plant crumbling into the ground. So I would like to clarify for people who are misinformed that that is not in fact the case. And in fact, if people go to the wiscasset.gov website and they go to the page titled wastewater treatment plant, Robert Lally in 2024 actually comments that the plant is currently licensed for a monthly average flow of 620,000 gallons a day. Our current monthly discharges are averaging about 180,000 gallons a day. So we're only functioning at about 29% of its current capacity. Additionally, he states the overall condition of the wastewater system is strong. and far exceeds the current demand, allowing for adequate capacity for growth. The age of the system does, however, as with anything, require current and ongoing investment in infrastructure upgrades. The town has recently expanded the system for the first time outside of Wiscasset borders to the town of Edgecombe. And the expansion has increased the revenue stream and cost sharing structure for future system upgrades, thus mitigating the financial burden on Wiscasset users. So therefore, would you say that it's accurate to state that the reason for the current relocation of the sewer treatment plant is due to the fact that it needs upgrades? But the DEP is concerned with the rising sea levels and potential flooding, and therefore they will not provide us with assistance for future fund maintenance and upgrades at this point in time. So it's not that it's failing, we're not gonna be overrun with sewage, it's not falling into the water. It's that we're gonna need current funding or future funding to maintain the upgrades. And the DEP and the state of Maine, and I do believe potentially the federal government is not going to give us any money if we choose to keep it where it is currently.
Because it's in a floodplain.
Yes,
Yes.
so, and I know that we have talked, or there has been discussion about building a seawall. They have said that they will not allow that. So we might have gone ahead with the seawall, but because of the DEP, we cannot do that, and that is why we are having to relocate this plant. Okay, perfect. So at this point in time, one of the issues that we're aware of is there's a lot of rumors floating around about, and nobody really knows the answer, and I would turn this over to Oliver to comment on, is construction concerns that people have regarding the amount of time construction's gonna take. A lot of the buildings in the area are aging, so what is put in place to protect those buildings? For example, my house right at the end of Sand Hill is 1850. We just replaced a 175-year-old structural beam because she's getting old. So theoretically, a sewer treatment plant is gonna require quite a bit of construction. For the people who live on Sand Hill and have to drive up to access their homes, what is going to be the accessibility, and not just on Sand Hill, but on Hodge Street alone, to be able to access our homes? The noise pollution, potential damage to the roads, and the adjacent cemetery. And with that, I will cease to speak.
Okay, do you wanna go through each individual rather than, that's fine, you can do that. Like each individual point.
There's a lot of points, so this
Okay.
one and then the next one are specifically related to Oliver.
Okay,
So
so I can
construction.
start with the answer to the last question, then Oliver, please, Mandy or whoever is on, feel free to add to this. One, I've heard the term, the time amount, 10 years, that is just not true at all for any timeline we have seen with anything. I know it was also, I think you said 5 to 6 or 5 to 7 years for the whole process. That means the whole process, not construction. Meaning we are in the 5 to 7 years right now with votes, with getting funding applications, with permitting eventually, all of that. So that would be one major point I wanna make, is that it is not that long. It is probably, and Mandy can correct me on this, but I believe it is more in the range of 2 to 3 years. That is what Wyndham just went through in a similar situation. They are just about done and they are just at the end of their second year, I believe. So Mandy, do you wanna add anything to that?
Sure. So I'm Mandy Holloway from Oliver Associates. Bill Oliver is the person that's in the boardroom where it says Oliver Associates Inc. And he also can answer questions regarding this. But yes, 2 to 3 years would be the construction period. It's going to take us longer to come up with the funding, the site development and permitting than the actual construction itself. Because we've already been in that process for several years as it is, and we're not there yet.
And I would add that even though I'll read this part later. As an overarching thing, I want folks to know that even though we have had the town vote, that does not 100% lock in that location. One, we know the funding is really difficult, as you explained, in terms of the federal government, the state government, all options for grants. We don't know when or if we will be able to find the 50+ million that we need to move it anywhere. We would much rather build a seawall if that becomes an option, and with the way government keeps changing, maybe it would become an option, we don't know. But there are also a lot more steps we have to take in addition to the funding in terms of permitting. The main reason that we had the vote is that because funders will not really even consider you until it looks like the community has made an effort to try to figure out where they want the place. If you haven't done that, they won't even consider it, so the process can't even start down the road, so.
So
Just
if I'm hearing you correctly, because that is one of the other points that I had later on, so we can scratch it off right now. Is that a lot of people have been told, this is a done deal. Why are you upset? This is a done deal, that's where it's going. And a lot of people were feeling duped and misled because their understanding is that before this went to a vote, they participated in a meeting in which they were told that, again, we just needed a location to start to pursue funding, which was a time-sensitive issue based on the period of time that these grants were, and that the location would be talked about later. But there's a lot of discussion about the fact that this is a done deal. This is the location that it will be placed on. And some of us are actually already seeing the repercussions of that in terms of our property values.
Could you expand on that last sentence?
The property
What do you
value?
mean you were already experiencing?
So there is a property on Sand Hill that has been for sale for 6 months, which in that area is almost unheard of. But additionally, the realtor did indicate that 4 people have looked at the property, 4 potential buyers, and said absolutely not, due to the fact that it's a planned site for a sewer treatment facility. Additionally, I know myself, Pearl and I have considered moving, not because we don't love where we are, but we're more kind of country bumpkins and would like to be someplace with land, so I can yell at him without people hearing me. So we consulted a realtor, and I know somebody else has, in that area has consulted a realtor, and we have been told that we will not be able to sell our house at fair market value because the vote has occurred listing the town garage as the place that this is being relocated to, and people will not purchase our homes to be that close to a sewer plant.
Could I just make a comment on that?
Yep.
I've heard this as well.
Mhm.
I will say not one single realtor has called this office to discuss this with me or anybody else. So they need to do their jobs as well and call, because I would have gladly explained just what Sarah had said. There's a long process that has to take place here. There's a lot of permitting that needs to be done, and it's not guaranteed the DEP will even permit this location. We
Agreed.
don't even know that yet.
However, the real estate ethics indicate that they have to disclose to potential buyers anything that may impact the value. So even though it's not a done deal, it has to be disclosed, and the fact that it's even a chance. People don't want to buy a house that close to a sewer treatment plant. I don't want to live in a house that close to a sewer treatment plant.
So. Couple things. Some of you may know, I grew up almost my entire life with the current wastewater treatment plant outside my bedroom window. I was gone for 4 years of college and 5 years in DC. I moved back 11 years ago now. My parents have lived there for 49 years. Not once have they ever smelled or noticed any air quality issues there. I now live as almost one of the closest houses to it. We never noticed it. However, I'm telling you this because I get that it's personal. I get that you are afraid about it. But I want to assure you that this is not the crisis that it is being blown up to be. And I take it a little bit. I've just been a little bit frustrated because I know someone else who is currently selling their house on Hodge Street. And I don't know who the people were, but I know there were people going around trying to dissuade potential buyers from buying, even though their realtor had been very upfront, explaining everything that's not the kind of community we live in. Please come talk to us. Like, thank you, Shannon, for coming and talking to us, because there is a lot of misinformation out there, and I get that the misinformation is scary. I get that. I would not be thrilled on the surface if somebody said, you're gonna put in a wastewater treatment plant next to me. I understand that. But there are a lot of things that we can go into, because I'm sure we're gonna hit a lot of the other concerns that you have. But so I guess I'll wait on some of that, but, and can you remind me, before I ask you the clarifying question, what was the previous question?
Can I just ask you a statement that you live near the current one?
Yes.
Did the family buy the property and it was already there when they bought it?
No,
So it was built while they were living there?
yeah, and I bought mine when it was already there.
Thank you. Just want to clarify.
I'm not sure which question, you're.
We might have already gone for it.
Yeah, we might have.
Okay.
But the construction process in terms of if it does occur in that location.
Yep.
What does the construction look like in terms of disruption to the homes? Because it's not a small feat, right? We're putting in pipes, things have to happen underground.
Mandy or Bill, can you address that at all?
Sure. And Bill, jump in here anytime. As far as construction goes, I can't sit here and say there's not going to be any noise, there's not going to be any dust. You'll notice that something's going on up the street, but it's not taking over our entire neighborhood. Most treatment plants are quite close to residential properties. We've had numerous projects in the last few years with similar situations, to which were renovations of a treatment plant, so not necessarily relocation, but construction right in the tight neighborhood. And they can do the best they can to try to not be disruptive, but it's not going to block Sand Hill Road or block Hodges Road. There may be periods when there's some utility construction going by that you might see for a replacement of a water or sewer, which is kind of commonplace, but it's short-lived. The actual tanks themselves, when you're on a tight site like that, they're going to build one tank, then build another tank. So there will be construction, you'll notice, but it's not going to preclude people from getting to their houses and be a constant thing that's going on for that whole duration.
Right, and to your point, you're saying that a lot of that was reconstruction or rehabbing current plants. So we're talking about removal of the public works. So there will be destruction, if you will, and then the erection of an entirely new plant. So that feels like it's a lot more construction than just rehabbing an existing facility.
It not necessarily. Some of these have been extensive, $12 million tanks that are being replaced with a lot of excavation, the same kind of thing that you would notice.
Let me just weigh in. So I'm Bill Oliver. I've been doing this for 50 years, all over the state of Maine. We probably do 100 projects a year, and probably a third of those are wastewater plants. So it is true that there is a slight difference between a renovation versus a relocation, because our first preference, including in Wiscasset, is always to fix the existing plant. Your plant right now is 60 years old, so it isn't failing, but some of the equipment there is 60 years old. It was upgraded 43 years ago, and then again 33 years ago. And typically most wastewater plants need some kind of renovation or upgrade every 20 years. And as Mandy said, probably half the plants we work on are right in downtown areas, or they're right in residential areas. And the reason is that's where the service lines are that bring the water to the plant. You also have to take the treated water and put it back out to the environment, to the receiving water, to the river. So it isn't unusual to have a plant in this kind of location. But when you renovate a plant that has equipment and buildings that are, say, 50 years old, some of the original stuff is still there. You're doing the same kind of demolition and replacement as you would be for a brand new plant. So I really don't think there's a distinction between the two types of projects.
Well, for those of us who have never been through it, the important part of this is to clarify this information, because when people are thinking about underground piping, right? What is the process for installing underground piping? And Maine is full of ledge, right? There's a lot of rocks. And some construction sites involve blasting. So these are the reasons that we're asking. We're asking for specifics of what that looks like. Because of the area that we live in, it is residential. We do live in Maine where there's a lot of ledge. And when you're doing blasting and issues or things like that in such a tight residential facility, you can tell I work in healthcare, residential area, then there's potentially damage to surrounding homes. And so that's what we're asking for, is what are the specifics of the construction when you need to lay pipe and you hit ledge? How do you remove that barrier?
Okay, I'll answer that. So you mentioned piping. It's true, there's piping to get to a plant and there's piping to get out of the plant. There's piping internal to the plant between different processes. Before you do any digging, and right now, the site is just being assessed to see what's out there. We would do ledge probes to find out, well, do we have ledge or not? The idea is to not hit ledge if you can avoid it, to go around the ledge outcrops, because it's costly to take out ledge. But we often have to blast ledge on many projects, and this is really no different than laying a pipe. You probably drive by sewer designs, projects, water lines all the time, and traffic's moving by. There may be ledge there, you don't even really notice what's going on because it's just done all the time. We've had to blast ledge right up to the foundations of existing plants. And before we do that, we always do a pre-blast survey of everything within 500 feet of the blasting area. And the contractor is required under the contract to minimize the amount of the blast so we don't damage structures that are like right next to where we're digging and blasting. So it isn't something that's not considered. It's done on many projects. But until we have ledge probes of the site and any sewer route along the way, I don't know. But other than to say that ledge is always a concern and it's addressed during the construction. We don't want to go in there and damage properties.
Great. And I was just gonna say, we appreciate that information, and I understand, you saying that this is common for you, but it's not common for us, which is why we're asking the question, because the more transparency, the more information we have, the less the rumor mill occurs and the less misinformation is conveyed. So these are specific questions that people had, and that's why we're asking them.
Can I just say, and I appreciate your concern, I really do, but I want you to know that every project that we work on has the same kind of concerns with the residents. There's nobody who's ever come to me in 50 years and said, do you think you can put a wastewater plant next to our property? Nobody's gonna want this project near them. And every time we're putting pipe in the street, there's the same concerns. If we're blasting ledge to put in a water line or a sewer line. So I do understand your concerns, and we definitely want to give you good information.
I remembered the other point, which was about people feeling like they didn't know what was happening. This has been something that I've been very, I guess, focused on in the last 5 years on this board, is trying to get as much information out to the public as possible. And so I know I've heard multiple times that, well, we didn't know. And I guess I'm open to suggestions on how to get information to you outside of knocking on your door. And I will side note that with knocking on your door or sending you a certified letter. That happens when you actually have the full plans and it is moving forward and it's a planning board process, and there are laws that we have to follow in terms of notifying people who are in a certain radius. Outside of that, we can't knock on every door of every resident for every issue that might affect them. And I would hope that you would agree that that's not where you want your tax dollars to go. That being said, folks, if I could ask if you could please not speak so folks can hear online. I'm happy to hear your thoughts in just a few minutes. That being said, there were at least 6 to 10 meetings where this has been talked about at a public meeting in the select board over the last 3 years. There were multiple public hearings. There were multiple meetings in which we went over other sites and how much they would cost. All of those were public, and people can come to ask questions and have comments. Before the vote, there was not only a public hearing and all the laws were followed on posting when the hearing was and when the vote was. But Dennis now does a thing before each vote before things where he actually goes through and prepares a sheet of information, because we know a lot of the questions, particularly the ones that the state dictates how we have to write them, can be confusing if you haven't been to previous meetings or whatnot. And so we post that warrant in places like the post office, as well as on the bulletin board right over there. And with that warrant was a several page document that outlined, there were 3 or 4 questions that we thought people might not know everything about. And so I just wanted to read a couple things from that document. Several relocation sites were considered, with the Public Works garage site emerging as the most feasible option. Other town-owned sites were ruled out due to proximity to sensitive areas like schools or high redevelopment costs. The Public Works garage site is close to both the river and the existing wastewater collection system, which minimizes construction costs for new main lines and pumps. Although adjacent landowners offered to sell additional property near the garage to avoid building a new one, the DEP determined that these lands were unsuitable due to wetlands and drainage issues. The plant will be, if everything works out, will be placed where the garage currently stands. Several privately owned properties were also evaluated, but none of the suitable landowners were willing to sell, making the public works site the most viable option. While eminent domain remains a potential route, it is not preferred. Obviously, we do not want to do that to anyone. I edit that. The new plant can be designed to blend in aesthetically. Modern measures like enclosed sludge dewatering and air scrubbers will be implemented to prevent odor issues. The other part of this is that the further you get away from the water and the current site, the more expensive it gets for everyone, not only ratepayers, but all taxpayers. So that's another consideration. But back to the not knowing. It also was in the paper. I stopped pulling out links when I got to 12 different times with the Wiscasset newspaper, the Lincoln County News, Bangor Daily News, News Channel 6. I'm not listing this off to be rude to you all. I just am trying to express that this in no way was trying to be not transparent. We were trying to use all possible channels to get people the information. There's also a monthly report that all of our department heads have to write that comes through in all the meeting minutes that often has talked about this issue. So I realize some people don't listen to our select board meetings, or you can't come, I get that. I know some people don't read certain newspapers or newspapers at all, that's fine too. But so I guess what I'm saying is, after the meeting or at the meeting, tell me if there are other ways that we can get to you, because I don't want people to feel like they don't know anything. What we're using, and we're using the town website, and we have a text alert system for things, like, I don't know what, and our Facebook site, we've posted things. I don't know what other channels.
I think some of what you're talking about is absolutely valid, right? You have put it in those places, but the issue for a lot of people is the terminology that was used. And that's something that I'm not sure how you overcome, because wastewater treatment plant, when people read that, they thought they were talking about a water treatment facility. And I'm gonna ask for a show of hands in this room, who knew they were voting for a sewer treatment facility? You knew that. Did anybody else know they were voting for a sewer facility, or was it water treatment?
I thought it was water treatment and I voted yes for it. But then I
Who thought it was water? A couple of people here, but when we were canvassing the area, and we went to Gardner Road, Churchill, Hodge, Hooper, we were, hitting the road. And people said, I didn't vote for a sewer treatment plant. Yes, you did. But in the 2024 annual report, on page 52, 54, it's listed as the Wiscasset Sewer Department. When you look up online, there's nothing about a wastewater treatment plant currently existing in Wiscasset. It's actually called Wiscasset Sewage or something like that down on Cows Island. And a lot of people have no idea what wastewater means.
I'm not sure how even explain that, it's wastewater.
But I mean,
The
that's
town
what
doesn't
I
even do-
I get that, but the thing is, even looking through all of the things that you cited on the website, whatever, they all refer to it as a wastewater treatment plant. I get that that's not what people immediately may think, but that's why we have all these hearings and why we put out this information. Like,
And on the website, it does say wastewater, AKA sewer, correct? Because what we're trying to do is make the connection for people that that's what it is. Because again, people, when we canvassed, did not know that's what it was. And a lot of people were really upset and they said that they didn't vote for that. And we were trying to provide education that that is exactly what you voted for. The relocation of a sewage facility, not the wastewater. And the other source of confusion,
okay,
was-
but, sorry, I have, because we're trying to get it right,
Yeah.
it is wastewater, that is what it is called. I'm really sorry if people didn't know that that is synonymous with sewage, but that is what it is called.
Read the sign on that building.
Oxford wastewater treatment facility.
Yeah, that's Oxford, that's what we wanna build.
That's what
something
sewer
like that.
departments are.
That's right downtown and.
I understand
Okay,
that.
I don't think we're not gonna get to
Some
it.
places, what I'm saying is in Wiscasset's own information, it's referred to two different ways. I get a sewer bill, I don't get a wastewater bill.
Agree with that. It is listed on our town website as wastewater treatment plant.
I'm aware of that, that is listed there. I think I quoted that earlier when I was quoting Robert Lally, that it says wastewater. But that's what I'm saying, is it's not synonymous. We have sewer in some places and we have wastewater in other places, which would also stand to reason. If I thought it was sewer, then when they're talking about wastewater over here, it would be something different.
Okay, I guess I would just go back to. You don't know, I don't,
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
How many people in this room know that the water district is not part of the town?
it is, say it again.
How many people know that the Wiscasset Water District is not part of the town?
Yeah.
So why would you think you were voting to relocate anything to do with water if water's not part of the town?
Cause you got a bill that says water and sewer.
That's right.
That's because they do our billing for us, but.
Yeah, well, that's one reason.
Well, and again-
Another reason, if I may, I live on Hooper Street, I voted no, because I didn't know enough about it. Plain and simple. Figured like, we really appreciate what you're doing. Flyers delivered by the post office, for one, I think that might be effective, and for two, wastewater and sewage is the same as dairy and yogurt. Yogurt is dairy, sewage is wastewater, but you can have dairy without yogurt. You can have the wastewater without the sewage.
Can you? Rob,
And you had what?
can you have
No,
wastewater?
I'm not talking about their process, I'm talking about verbiage.
Right, but I'm just saying, I get what you're trying to
Wastewater.
say, but I don't think that's.
So sewage is one component of wastewater.
Wastewater. It is not, wastewater doesn't necessarily encompass all the sewage.
Sometimes wastewater is treating gray water. There's components. And when you look it up online, it does say wastewater describes a system and sewage describes what is being treated in a wastewater facility. It's one component. So again,
So I guess I appreciate the idea of a flyer, but. How many of those are we gonna do? Do we,
How many properties are on that building?
no, I'm saying for how many issues, because I think you could make that argument for a lot of different issues in town.
This is a contested thing.
I think it's,
Listen, you were, I'm sorry if I offended you, you opened it up for any ideas, I was simply sharing an idea, I'm sorry if this was not the right way to do it. But I think when it comes to something that will certainly affect property value, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. We can wax intellectual, and we can debate about whether or not it should. But the truth is, it will. It will affect property value. That's just the fact of it. Until it's in there, and until you can say, this isn't what we're trying to do, this is what we've done. is gonna have that effect. So to start with, what type of issues, I would say those properties probably should receive a flyer or something. It's just my opinion, and I'm comfortable being all of that.
Well, it's the fear of uncertainty that causes, that you've lived near one, so you can say with certainty. Until it is built, his point is until it's built and proven not to have an impact, the uncertainty for the next 5 to 7 years will affect those properties in that zone.
And
I understand that.
Just,
So therefore, they're the highest risk and therefore should be the most, if you were asking how to improve communication. Those are the properties that are at most risk, so they should be at a higher level of communication than the entire town of Wiscasset. Or asking people to seek the information versus giving the information directly to them. That's the two, I think most of your methods of communication where somebody had to seek it. Versus you gave it directly to the homeowners because you knew that they were gonna be the ones that were gonna be the most upset and therefore the most vocal and impacted.
And I appreciate that, I guess people have gotta engage a little bit though, I find it. It's just.
I purchased a home in this area in the last 10 months. I knew nothing about it. I've lived in the area for 10 months. I knew nothing about it until I got a flyer on my front porch yesterday.
Did you real estate
Real estate never mentioned it. Nobody ever talked about it. The signs weren't up in the community at that time. So I knew nothing about it.
I guess my point with the flyers is, I don't disagree with you that that is the ideal for when there is something like this that we know could potentially impact certain homes, yes. But the problem is, where do you draw the line in terms of what issues do you send those flyers on? Because I'm pretty sure we would all have different opinions on.
Of course you, and that's your
Okay.
responsibility in a leadership position to make those decisions, to say, hey. Property value is gonna be near and dear to everybody's heart, therefore we need to communicate on those.
And I guess I would just ask that we not be putting out what is fact and what is not if we don't know. To your point, sir, you said it's a fact that property values will go down. I don't believe that is a fact until we know.
on that. I have.
Folks, come on, I'm respecting you, please respect me. Shannon?
I do have research on that. But if I can speak to the point that was made first, when we're talking about what things should be more clearly communicated, potentially with a flyer. One is property value. Two, one of the issues that I wanted Oliver to address that we haven't even gotten to is the well-known fact that oftentimes associated with wastewater treatment or sewer treatment facilities is pollution. Pollution to the area that I have extensively researched and have come across the fact that there is no wastewater treatment plant that has zero pollution. And if Oliver has information opposite of that, I would love the scientific research, because one of the things that we did provide here are references to the research that we did do. I have multiple quotes about the research indicating the type of pollution that we are to expect. And additionally, part of the reason that you don't experience odor and pollution is because it is on the water. Prevailing wind takes it to the water. Now prevailing wind is going to be uphill of these homes. And so odor, potential toxins, which I'm happy to speak on those toxins and would love the opportunity to speak on those toxins, because that is one of the reasons it's a hot button issue. It's not just odor, it's property value, it is potential pollution, it is the location of the historic village. And I have valid points for all of those things, but I don't know where you would like me to start of each of those.
Wherever you'd like to.
So I guess we'll start with asking Oliver, can you speak to the type of pollution that is generated by a wastewater treatment facility?
Why don't you tell me what you researched? Because, I mean, the whole purpose of a plant is to remove pollution from the environment.
Understood.
So I'm not sure what your concern is.
Okay, so I actual quotes from research articles I read, including the area that they're talking about being affected. So if you don't mind, what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and read those quotes. I typically quote the journal from which it came from and the year that it was published. But also what I've provided people here in the handout is, let me find what that is actually called. Where did you write that down? In the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health in 2023, there's a table that I've provided everybody called odor characteristics of chemical compounds found at wastewater treatment facilities, along with the degree of nuisance. In 2023, the second table that is associated with that is the impact of selected odorants on humans and the environment. Also 2023, there's, and it lists each chemical compound, the impact on humans and the impact on the environment. So those are two of the handouts, and then the quotes that go with some of the research. Per the Journal of Environmental and Public Health in 2016, a study was conducted on residents living within 0.31 miles. So that's 1,600 feet. This map that I had done as a point of reference for people actually only has a radius of 1,000 feet. So this is fairly conservative.
Yes, but you also must mention that you didn't put on here, these houses are already within 1,000 feet of the sewer plant. You didn't put that
But
on.
those houses are upwind of the sewer plant. The prevailing-
Yeah, Rob.
prevailing-
Rob.
And I'd like to.
Rob, please let Shannon
All right,
finish this.
good.
So this is research, this is not my opinion, okay? A high rate of residents reported headaches, concentration issues, unusual tiredness, mood swings, and high instances of gastrointestinal symptoms. Both microbiological and olfactometric, that's a hard word, tests show that the greatest air pollution extended to 1,600 feet from the examined sewer treatment plant. That's one study. Another study published in the Journal of Environmental Quality in 2021 says residents living near wastewater treatment plants reported high incidences of respiratory symptoms and gastrointestinal disorders. Children, the elderly, and those with pre-existing conditions are particularly vulnerable, which has me concerned when we look at the fact that the elementary school is downwind. Maine Health is within this radius. The dentist where I'm lying with my mouth open within that radius. And it's emitting bioaerosols, which are viruses and bacteria into the air that do not stay in the air indefinitely. So it also states millions of human pathogenic viral particles are shed from infected individuals and introduced into wastewater, subsequently causing waterborne diseases worldwide. These viruses can be transmitted from wastewater to human beings via direct contact and or ingestion/inhalation of aerosols. Even the advanced, direct quote, even the advanced wastewater treatment technologies are unable to remove pathogenic viruses from wastewater completely, posing a serious health risk. An etiological agent of COVID-19 has frequently been detected in wastewater. And to paragraph another study, because I don't think people wanted CFUs per M3, I don't know that anybody would know that, but the reference is there. Air densities of total aerobic bacteria containing particles, fecal coliforms and fecal streptococci increased significantly within the perimeter of the plant during operation. A percentage of the emitted bacterial contamination can be transported over considerable distances. And that's just a little bit of the research. I didn't,
Scientific reports, they,
those are journals, yes, scientific peer-reviewed
not
journals.
hearsay or political.
Peer-reviewed journals that can be accessed by anybody online, and that's just a small percentage of the data that we found. I actually removed a bunch of it because I did not want this to be an entire conversation about data. I felt like those points alone were disturbing enough to have us ask some questions about how we're going to make sure the air quality is not affected, because one of the things that the study did also, all of the studies said is that the contaminants, the levels changed depending on the season you were in, the weather, and the time of day the samples were taken. So hot, humid weather, there was more contamination, and a particular time of day, for example, once everybody gets home from work and there's more tax on the wastewater treatment facility, there's a higher level of contamination at that point as well. And, you know, for someone such as myself, and this is not just about me, but, you know, we are a small community and we do make it personal, right? That's why we're here, to just be open and honest. I sit at the bottom of where this is going to go. I am downhill and I am downwind. And my kitchen window, where I prepare food for my family, is directly in the line of any airflow that's gonna come from this plant, right into my kitchen window, as is potentially the bistro. And Mark Quick Stop, I wanna call it Market 27, I'm getting my stuff all screwed up. Where they prepare and serve food to the public. So this is the information that we want, so that we have informed consent about this. And so if I backtrack and I talk about who should have known, I was aware that this was one of the areas that was considered. I absolutely was. And I consider myself a fairly educated individual. But I was honestly waiting for the point that I thought was going to come that did not, where the town would be called to look at the residents, not the select board. These are options. This is the potential cost associated. What is going to make the most sense? I didn't know that that particular site was going to end up on a ballot before we were even notified that that was what people were voting on. And the other part that's concerning to some of us, and this truly, understand it for what I'm saying, is not to be accusatory in any way, shape, or form. I need some water. One of the areas of concern was that there was a large vote associated with this, right? And I'm scratching my head because all I can think is, how the heck did we end up with, I'll give you the exact number. This dialogue, right? I'm glad that we can have a dialogue, but now I'm
There
all
were 2,246 people that voted.
2,375, I guess like 120.
2,246 that voted for that particular question.
Okay, I'm just quoting what was in the news article. For 1,416 in favor and 832 opposed. If you go into the town warrants of the annual report, it lists a lot of the articles that we voted on, right? And the turnout for those articles. And we average typically 500 to 600 voters. So how on God's green earth did we end up with almost 4 times that amount? And it's because people came out to vote for their president, and this was there as well. So the point being, typically 500 to 600 people really pay attention to or are invested in what goes on in this town. I'm always there voting. Granted, I get some of my, you know, information from my husband, and some of it I tell him, go pound sand. But we vote every time there's a vote because it is important and it does affect his livelihood, right? Because he is one of the town employees. And these are issues of great importance. So what I feel is part of the issue is that many people came out to vote and they were not. If you think the local people weren't educated, how about the people outside of this area who don't pay into sewer, may not know what wastewater is, and I also believe have no idea where Hodge Street or the town garage is. And part of the reason I make that assertion is because I had a business in this town. And I would often talk to people about where I lived. And my first thing was to reference the town garage because I thought that's a pretty easy landmark. Hey, I'm right across the street from there. And most people had no idea where the town garage is. And if I said Hodge Street, now I'm painting a picture. Okay, so you go down Route 1 to pass the town hall and pass Route 27, and as you start to round the big corner where the church is, there's a little street on the right, that's Hodge Street. So I don't believe people knew the site that they were voting for, that this was gonna be right in the historic area of town, which is integral for so many reasons that we can get into, but I've been running my face, so I'm gonna pause and.
So can I address the last thing, and then I'm happy to go over to Oliver about the pollutants issue. I actually wish our town budget was voted on at a November election, because we have such a low turnout in June.
Agreed.
Many people hate special town meetings because, just to be clear, even though it's called a special town meeting, it is a secret ballot vote. It's just the terminology we use. Those are not a good representation of what the town wants, because there's so few people that either know about them or can get there to vote, because they're not like. November elections, people have on their calendar, they know. Thankfully, to some extent, most people in town know that we do a lot at our June elections. So. I understand the concern, and particularly based on the confusion with the terminology. However, I will always be on the side of more people voting than less people voting.
I don't disagree with you, however, the point being that, again, if the people that this most closely affected didn't even know what the heck was going on, it's highly unlikely that the people that it doesn't affect knew what it was about. And so that vote then directly affects us, because again, they're making, voting on something that they may not have known what it was, and may not have known the location of. And additionally, shall I pause and, or do you wanna do the pollutant? Why don't we
Yeah,
do
let's
the
finish
pollutant?
answering,
The pollutant, yeah.
Bill or Mary,
Mandy.
Mandy, sorry.
Let me take that. So I don't know about your specific articles that you researched. I'm sure you can find all kinds of articles like that anywhere. But I think what's the big picture? There's 16,000 municipal wastewater treatment plants in the United States. And every one of those has a staff working there. Sometimes it's a small staff, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. But in some communities, like say Bangor, Portland, or whatever, you probably get 20 or 30 people inside the confines of the plant. And it is true that every disease in any community is in the sewage, because people are discharging every pathogen that's around into the sewage. The plant has to treat that water before it can leave the building and go out to the environment. This is a heavily regulated industry, with DEP and EPA setting strict standards on what the plant can do. And if what you're saying was true, and I'm not going to dispute these research articles, but everybody who works in these plants, there's thousands of people working in wastewater plants. They're not getting sick. They're not getting sick the way you described, because if what you said was true, you couldn't build a wastewater treatment plant anywhere or have anybody working in it. So within the plant.
Actually, that's factually incorrect. There are multiple articles that actually discuss
I
the
listened to you.
amount
Could I
of people
please
who
finish?
work in
Could I
the
please finish?
wastewater treatment facility.
He's asking if he can, please finish.
Yeah,
So the environment within the plant is heavily controlled with all kinds of air equipment, all kinds of scrubbing equipment, disinfection of the water before it leaves the premises. The people in the plant aren't getting sick. So you're suggesting anybody within 1,600 feet is at risk, even though you've got a plant right now that's within 800 feet of the school, within 1,000 feet of the federal street area there. So I just have a hard time. It's fear mongering for you to say those things, because that means we should shut down 160,000 plants because they're not safe to even work in. It's just not true.
fear mongering is when somebody spreads misinformation, which is not what I'm here to do. I'm actually here to get information. And if your assertion is correct, then I would like the peer-reviewed research studies that indicate that there is no pollution and no risk to us. And per your point, the sewer, wastewater people do not get sick. That is actually incorrect. And you can do the research on that as well, because that is something that they have researched Also, not everybody knows why they're getting sick, and environmental toxins are a hot button issue. Because for years in this country, we have allowed things to occur that actually made people sick. And so I believe when I'm sitting here quoting, and I provided references, I am not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes or do fear mongering. I am trying to provide data and I am asking you to speak to that data. So if you have actual data that tells me there is 0 toxins emitted from this facility, then I would love to see that information. Otherwise, please do not accuse me of fear mongering. I find that rude and disrespectful.
No. Please do not, I made this mistake when we went through the St. Philip's Center. Please do not clap or boo or what for either side, whether you just, it's just, please don't. We just try to keep it even keel here.
Yeah.
I think it's a little unfair on both your sides. He has not had a chance to see the research that you presented here tonight.
Yeah.
He doesn't know the journals that you're quoting. And so I think it's just a little unfair, for him to actually speak to that when he's not sure what he's quoting.
In the door, but I think it's appropriate.
Exactly.
The expert here to these people in the room. Are you saying he's not an expert on wastewater treatment?
That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying he hasn't had a chance, like any other
To see this.
scientist, to review the stuff and see where it came from and say, yes, this is a respected journal and I agree with it, or no, this is total trash. That's all.
But
Like,
he also present data that he should know as a professional to us, correct?
And not
He
accuse
doesn't
of fear mongering.
He could be presenting whatever he gave when he did the analysis of wastewater treatment plant. If that's what his profession is, he should be able to quote them.
And what I ask is, what is the risk of pollutants? And I've not been given an answer for what the risk of pollutants is. I've been given, I'm gonna blank on the term for it, but basically just a statement that, you know, if X, then Y, you know, we wouldn't be allowed to have this, but that's not true. There are all kinds of things that exist in this country and they have risks associated with them when people do those jobs. That's just common knowledge and people accept those risks, and we know that. But this is data that we found, again, peer-reviewed investigations, a lot of them in PubMed, and again, I provided the references there. And I do agree, Dennis, it is very hard to speak to something that you haven't had an opportunity to look at. But typically, one would say, I haven't had an opportunity to review that. I would like to do so. Here is the data that I have, but the accusation of fear mongering, I feel like is trying to render me invalid and shut it down instead of just answering the question and being transparent for public concern of what the risk is for pollutants, especially for those living downhill. We have a vulnerable population of children that we deserve the right to know this answer to. And that's if you don't care about the health of the citizens that are within that area. We do want to know about the children.
Please do not, as I agree, it was unfair of him to say fear mongering.
I said, if you don't care.
But to even put that on the table that we would not care about residents, that I would take extremely personally.
I have a question. What type of wastewater treatment plants are those surveyed? They're like in the Chicago area, they have beds where they put the stuff churning out in the wind.
Sure.
Set them in beds.
One of them said even advanced wastewater treatment plants, and as early as 2021.
But like one of them, like the first one, which was listed on your website, is from Greece from 10 years ago, and I would argue that Greece does not exactly have the environmental protections and
We
technology that
don't
we
know
have.
that either.
Right, but I'm just saying, we can go
Right.
back, but Bill, can you expand at all on what kind of pollutants there would be and what effects there could potentially be?
I'd rather stick with the big picture. So in addition to being designers and construction managers of wastewater plants for 5 decades, we also operate 31 water and wastewater plants throughout the state of Maine. So we have our own staff in these plants we don't see those kind of statistics you're talking about in our plans. And we wouldn't put our employees in that kind of a situation, so. You know, I just don't agree, I'm sorry.
I guess, Bill, would it be possible to get some more information? Perhaps on similar plants in Maine in terms of what they actually see? Because frankly, I appreciate you've gone to a lot of effort putting this all together. But I think it would be even more helpful if we had ones that were in Maine that were similar to what we're looking at here. So we could actually have something to compare to that was apples to apples.
If it is a peer-reviewed research study, yes, because.
I'm not asking for a research study, I'm saying like
But we
literally.
are asking for
No, no,
research.
well, excuse me. I'm talking about, for example, Rob gives us all of the numbers and the data every single month that we have. That doesn't need to be peer reviewed. That's what it is. Other plants have that.
So one of the questions that I had asked earlier is, what is currently the systems in place that monitor this? What is the frequency of that? So when you're getting reports, what are those reports indicating to you? What things are being measured?
Would you
And are
like
we
to
doing
speak to that?
fair quality reports?
The DEP and the EPA set all testing standards for every single sewer plant in the United States. They decide what you're going to test for every day, and some of it is weekly, and some of it is monthly. And some things like dangerous metals and mercury and stuff like that, you might test twice a year, something like that. Probably the most virulent thing that we would test for, and we test for it twice a week, and that at Wisconsin, is fecal coliforms and enterococci bacteria, which is also another form of coliform bacteria. And we have to meet a certain standard on every test. They have limits on all the things that you test for. So the EPA and the DEP tell us what to test for, we test for it. And if there's a violation, then we have to immediately tell the DEP. And we have to take action, and I'll give you an example. We've had examples where we disinfect all the water that leaves the sewer plant with sodium hypochlorite, which is a chemical that kills bacteria. And sometimes the dispensing equipment gets jammed up and we don't know about it. And suddenly we'll have a hit. Our limit on fecal coliforms is 36 colonies. And I have had 41 recently. And the reason we had 41 was because the dispensing mechanism in the dispensing pump clogged. So as soon as we find out about that result, we have to call the DEP. They have to tell us, hey, what are you doing about it? And we follow through, and then we take another test after we correct it. And before I arrived at Wisconsin, they had a lot of violations, so many violations for various things that we were put under a consent order. So the DEP has us under the microscope right now, looking at us. And since I've been here, we've had the odd violation here or there, but we haven't had the kind of violations before I arrived. So fecal coliforms are what goes into the water. We're allowed 36 colonies on a test. And so we've been within compliance for, out of the 5 years that I've been here, we may have had 4 or 5, maybe 6 cases over that time. I mean, it's that quick.
You're talking about the testing of the water.
Correct.
What she's asking about is the
The
testing
DEP,
of the environment around the
we're
facility.
talking about the air.
Yes.
So
The
our
DEP.
question is that environment around that treatment plant
Yes.
different than it currently is right now? So at our homes right now, whatever the measurement would be, is it gonna be affected by putting that treatment plant there?
Only the DEP and the EPA can answer that question.
No, no.
Because,
Can I ask you,
Hey,
certainly,
do you think this is a good location for a plant here?
expert, yeah,
You do.
yeah.
And is your home in the environment?
Have you
It's
looked
not.
at the topo now?
Oh,
I have done something, I
Ever been an overflow here?
Okay. Folks, we really gotta make sure that one person talking at a time, and really you should be announcing your name every time you talk, so folks online know who you are, cause they can only see parts of the video, okay? All right, Bill, is there anything you can say, or Mandy, about Kathleen's question in terms of the air quality?
I think that you should bring EPA and DEP into this discussion. They've got a air bureau down in Augusta. They know about all the plans, talk to them.
I didn't catch that.
He said we should engage with the EPA because they have people who could help us with that question. That's not something that they measure.
All right, so they're not measuring the, Oliver Associates, they're not measuring air
It does
quality.
not sound like.
Okay,
It is not standard of care to measure the air around a wastewater treatment facility.
so if it's not standard of care, and you told me that I was fear mongering when I was quoting peer reviewed research based on air quality, I'm horribly confused about that.
Well, I didn't tell you that, and I'm sorry for the way that came across. But I think at this point in time, we would like to take a look at what you have for information and prepare a response on behalf of the town if the town would like us to do so.
Karen?
Yeah, Karen Sullivan, just for the record there.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? I mean, is there a term for what this wastewater treatment plant design is? Because somebody referred to open pits or this and that. What are we actually talking about?
It's my understanding that that's one of the things that has yet to be decided. Is that correct, Bill and Mandy?
To an extent, so all wastewater plants, for the most part, are some kind of a system where aerobic bacteria are grown that biodegrade the organic matter in the incoming wastewater or sewage. And then after that, the microbes are wasted as sludge and sent to a landfill. And the effluent is disinfected with some type of usually chlorine product before it gets put back to the environment. So the system you have right now is called activated sludge, where your microbes are grown in aeration basins. There's other processes like the one that you mentioned, Bill, I think in Oxford, that has a membrane biofilter. There's rotating biological control. There's all kinds of different terms, but they're all really doing the same thing, where microbes are growing in some type of reactor to biodegrade the organics. And the difference between what's there now and what you're gonna have, no matter where you put it, is that we would probably put the process indoors in a completely enclosed building with air handling equipment, odor scrubbers, all that stuff, because you're in a tight site. But the plants, I think my comment on the fear mongering, I apologize if it was viewed as rude. I wasn't trying to be. What I was trying to say was, if journals are journals, and I get that, but the real data of all these plants that are operating, including the one you have right now, I don't think you have a record of illness in Wiscasset in the neighborhood of the plant. And if you draw that same 1,600 foot circle, you're going to you're going to intersect some of the same areas you've drawn from your circle from the public works site. So that was really my point. There's bad stuff in wastewater, but if what you're reading from these journals was a concern everywhere, then you really wouldn't build a treatment plant anywhere, nor would you have staff working into plants. They'd be ill all the time. That was my point.
Kathleen Gordon, but you said that the DEP might not even fund something based on where you're putting the location if you can't get the standards of the air quality and things to affect. They're not gonna fund it. Isn't that what you said at the beginning of this meeting?
I didn't say. I'll answer that.
No, that she's talking about what I said.
Okay.
What I said was they won't fund it because it's in a floodplain,
No, that's
the
the
current,
current facility,
right?
but the new proposed facility, you're gonna have to meet
Oh, I
certain
know.
expectations or certain EPA limits, otherwise they aren't gonna fund it.
Yeah, so there's a whole permitting process that if they found, I guess that's part of the reason why I take so much offense to the idea that anyone would think we would be putting people in danger, because we haven't even got to that point. They would be answering those questions and they wouldn't allow us to actually be permitted there if there were levels of anything that were too high.
Or the design was gonna cause the levels to be.
Yes. Yeah, in other words, the plant being there would cause things.
Correct.
If that was.
Yeah, I hand these out, so they're talking about the pits and things.
Yeah, Bill has some photos from other plants
Dennis and
that
I,
are
last
similar.
year or the year before, went up to Oxford. They got a state-of-the-art plant. This is on the main street in Oxford.
That's the entire plan,
If
that's
you,
all of it.
If you didn't know what it was, you'd think it was a regular office building without a sign on it. Hand them out, some are in black and white, and some are in color. But you can take a look, there's no pits, everything's inside the building.
So I think to your point, Sarah, when you talk about, you know, they wouldn't allow it to happen, if there was a risk. There's always, with government entities, what's considered an acceptable risk. It's not that there's no risk, it's that it's considered an acceptable risk in their eyes. But it's an acceptable risk in the eyes of the people who are living, in some cases, pretty much right on top of where this facility is going to go. This is, again, a densely packed residential area. Most of these properties have less than an acre to their name. And two of the residences have to drive right up the landfill.
Louder, if possible.
We louder?
Yes.
I've never been asked to do that before.
There's mumbling going on, so.
Okay. So where was I? Densely packed residential areas, a couple of people who have to drive actually up into what would be the wastewater treatment plant to access their homes. And, you know, the other component of this that, you know, I'm sure you've read and I feel like is to a lot of us, what am I trying to say? Concerning, confusing is when we talk about this location, it's not just, you know, in a residential town or anything like that. It's in our historic district. Our district that on our own website talks about the fact that it's one of 3 architecturally significant villages in the state. It goes on to list all of the structures that are in Wiscasset in the Historic American Building Survey, the National Register of Historic Buildings, and a large part of the Village Historic District is part of the National Register. Part of the purpose of this map is I, for my own knowledge, wanted to go through and look at within that radius, how many places are of historic significance and or antique, for lack of a better word, homes. And all of the orange that you see, those are all homes built before 1900. And the purple, you give another 25 years because those are built before 1925. So they are now at least 100 years old or more. So this is a large area of old historic homes here in Wiscasset that are going to be affected, not to mention the Octagon House, Art Gallery, St. Philip's, you know, some of these that are right on Hodge Street, and the Evergreen Cemetery, which has been there since 1845, where our first Attorney General is buried and our 10th governor is buried. This is not just any place in our eyes. We're recognized statewide for what we are. And from a community perspective, if there is an odor, and I would, does anybody know this is a genuine question? Since that place has been built, is there any odor at all, any time of year?
Supposedly there's none, we smell none, and we're told there's no odor coming from it.
Fantastic.
At the time Bill and I made the trip up there, we did talk about that and they had no complaints. They have a secondary backup system to take care of odor if the biofilter system does not work.
Yeah.
They've never used it. They've never had to use it.
That's fantastic. Because we all know this is not just any area. When we think about the community involvement, this is where everybody congregates for Nightmare on Federal Street, right? And we got a pretty strong prevailing wind typically going on in October, but people park there, they walk over to Federal Street to enjoy their good time, and then Hodge Street is where they all come around to do their trick or treating. Additionally, that's where everybody congregates for 4th of July to watch the parade come down Hooper Street and Federal Street. It's the quiet side of town where tourists and locals all go to walk their dogs because it's nice, it's scenic, it's pretty. And when we talk about property value, and I can quote you, that number, and it was actually, a study done by the American Real Estate and Urban Economics Association. But one of the things, and I'll give you that information, one of the things that they talk about is it's not even necessarily that the plant is faulty, although nothing is ever 100%, and there are sometimes things that you have to fix, correct? It is the perception for potential home buyers. Nobody, when you're researching and looking to buy a home and you see that there's a sewer treatment plant in your backyard or in your side yard or looking out your kitchen window, that is not a home sell. People do not choose. Is there anybody that would buy a home knowing the treatment plant is in your backyard? So,
It is, then I have.
She actually did, so.
so one,
I guess I'm not, my comment about the fact of whether or not it will diminish home values. One, I'm not challenging you that there are many studies that places that has come true. I guess my point is that, and I know it's not exactly the same situation in terms of where the current one is and where this one would be. However, I don't think that you would find that anyone on Federal Street or Water Street or right where the current one is in the last 20 to 30 years has even noticed it's there, or at least it certainly hasn't brought their home value down. So I guess my point is, I totally understand that it is going to be not a pleasant situation for it to be built, and initially with people, I get that. I would probably be one of those that would question if I was, while it was in the process and all that. But once it is done, my hope would be that it would be the same as the current one, in that it is not an impacting factor for the majority of people.
I have a comment on the real estate.
Could you state your name, please?
Lori Rousseau.
Thank you.
Hi, the house next to us on Main Street is for sale. And, before it went on the market, a lady we know who summers here was looking for houses. She did, look at the house that was recently for sale on Hodge Street. And, talked about the fact that there was going to be the water treatment there. And, she declined to make an offer. She really liked the house, but she and her dog did not want to be near that. So, I just wanted to share that that is something that, I participated in discussion on.
Sir,
Well, has anyone,
sorry, what's your name, sir?
Bill Dykes, William Dykes,
Thank you.
I live on, Route on Hodge Street. But I think it's a really not a good idea to put it on public view. I have a topo map with me. And there are any number of people here and not here that will have, if it's an overflow, will have sewer in their back and front door. And I've been here 44 years, and there's been several overflows here. And,
Rob, can you speak to that? I'm not aware of that.
We had a flood, there was a flood from a Patriots Day storm that filled the basements, but nothing went into the river or anything like
well,
that.
I disagree with you. I've heard there was some local guys that worked here, and, that's one reason why they separated the storm sewer system, because, you know, not supposed to, COA is not supposed to come out. But anyway, I have visited, I started looking at properties, and I've visited a couple of, water treatment sewer plants. And one location found a beautiful house on the water. And, I went on a map to find the sewer plant. It's not even on the map. Not even on Google. And, started reading some articles on the internet. Found out they'd had a $500,000 accidental overcharge. And, reading what they did to correct it was asinine. It's affected the area. So I went to visit the area.
there's a golf course that used to have a $200, I believe a $200 tee fee, now it's down to $20. Because nobody wants to play there. And only the people that don't really know that there's in this process of treating sewer, it's not just the smell, but there's also bacteria and viruses that are aerated. And for quite a distance, there's a study, I just found it on the internet in Greece, where they discovered all these kids and everybody coming down with these diseases. But I wouldn't want to live downhill on Emo Federal Street. If you have 150,000 gallon accidental overcharge, discharge, overflow. You're gonna be leaving town. And I've seen, and two of the places I visited, I mean, this is a universal problem worldwide, with, sewer treatment. The towns are growing bigger. There's, one place I looked at, I went and found an independent water survey, an independent water test. It was not up to the federal or state regulations. They, what the government allows you to discharge as far as the 7 ppm. They also discovered there's pharmaceuticals that are in the water system that cannot be taken out of the sewer systems. And a lot of other chemicals in there that are used in the treatment that are in the new word is effluent. The water they discharge from the sewer plants is now called effluent. So we're getting all tricked with all these words about, water treatment plant, sewer.
No one's trying to trick anyone, sir.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying the whole world. I mean, not even put a sewer plant on a Google map in a large town. It has affected the real estate in 2 areas I looked at. I'm planning on looking at some more. I didn't know this was going on. I'm here living in Wisconsin, but I was down south and out in the Midwest looking at properties. And the first thing I do is, where is that sewer plant located? And where's the property? And how far am I downhill or what? In Florida, they have them out on the islands, but they still, they get them away from the town as far as they can. But to put them uphill, where if you have, and you're gonna have an accidental breach. I mean, they've had the greatest pipes, they use the modern pipes and they still break. Something happens, or a pump goes down. And but like I said, this one town, 500,000 gallons dumped into a freshwater lake that's 14 miles from the ocean is a sin and a crime. When I first came to Wisconsin, I looked to see where the sewer plant was, and I said, I'd like to see the town engineers, because you're supposed to dump it outgoing tide. Well, we're dumping water into the sewer, into a river here that is into our town water, our water system, our lake, where people swim and fish and fish for lobster. That should be downriver from where this town is located. And it should be such they could do it. I mean, I understand they have to dump all the time. It can't be just an outgoing tide. But we're polluting the water. I'd like to see an individual test of the water in the Wisconsin Bay. The bottom of it. I'm somewhat of an engineer and a scientist, and I don't like politics getting involved with things. But this whole thing about the water rising, the test I can see the water has risen in Portsmouth, the only test that I find in Portsmouth Harbor, like an inch in the last 10 or 20 years. They predict another inch. It's not like Al Gore did 20 years ago and said, half the water was gonna be in the water in 7 years. Well, it didn't happen. So where's the scientific facts for this thing about the money, about the water and where it's located now? Has anybody done a real scientific study?
It is a fact that we are in a floodplain that is built in a floodplain.
Yeah.
And it also is the case that we have had multiple storms now. So even if whatever your politics are and whatever you believe or not about climate change or whether it's a thing or not, the fact is we've had these storms that are bringing these storm surges, and it's getting too close. We were lucky that they were able to build the burrito if you've heard of that, the big sand berm that saved us the last huge storm. So that's the biggest reason why there's gotta be, we either have to build a seawall or whatever, or move it. And again, I would love for the EPA or the DEP to say, no, this is a terrible site, and you know what, we'll help fund a seawall. I think we would all love that. It would be much, much cheaper.
It's a terrible site for people that live downhill from it, and, don't think there won't be an accidental pipe break. Every town I've talked to, which had been about 3 or 4, they've all had the best engineering and the new plants. And then they've had overflow, accidental overflow. The seawall around the plant down with water where it is now is a good idea because, that'll have to pump stuff uphill. Just, doesn't make good sense to put it uphill in a historic town. There's so many reasons why it should not be up on High Street or at the plant. And if somebody should do, the board should assign a committee to go visit some of these other plants and really find out the truth about where to put these plants. It's a serious problem all over the world now. With more people coming in, more population.
The gentleman in the back.
Yes, hi, Randy Kaplan. I live close, not too close, really close. I'm kind of curious. I kind of agree with this gentleman here about pumping water. Sewerage was made to go downhill, it was invented to go downhill. How much, I'd like to take this in maybe a little different direction. How much is this thing gonna cost us to operate when we're done? After we pump this water uphill, process it with all these new systems, which I can tell you right now, I think you shot yourself in the foot. Everything malfunctions. You got a malfunction.
And it ages.
Brunswick has had a malfunction with theirs. You can smell it on the highway every now and again. Not bad, but it comes out on the highway. Canfield's down here at the bottom of the hill. They had a sewer breach and filled their cellar and destroyed their wine collection down there when it used to be a restaurant. So we do have issues. Everything mechanical breaks.
Of course.
What is this gonna cost down the road? We're hanging our hat on.
Bill, do you have a estimate on that?
No, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about, we're hanging our hat on federal money. We are federal money. I think everybody in this room pays taxes. I think we're all,
Oh,
you know.
I'm aware.
It's money. And I don't wanna get political, but the legislative action or even an executive order, I mean, the wacky stuff that's going on in Washington, this federal money is here today, gone tomorrow. We could be holding the whole bag on this money, and what's it gonna cost later on to operate it with all these pumps and fancy systems? And I think right now, we enjoy high, if not the highest water and sewer rates in mid-coast Maine, possibly all of Maine. I'm paying $500 a quarter up there for this stuff to go downhill. Where's that gonna go, 10 years from now, when all these systems are done and running? That's what I wanna know. I mean, I don't like pollution, and we do pollute. Because we spilled gasoline over here at the gas station on 27, and that went all the way to Route 1, and they pumped for 3 years steady, trying to suck that out of the ledge. So yes, things break, things are gonna happen, I don't want that to happen again if we have a chance to stop it.
Bill, can you address at all, once the plant is built, what kind of cost increase, if any, there would be?
So in terms of running the plant, most of the process will have about the same operating cost as you have now, subject to inflation. That's the plant itself. As we get away, and I agree, wastewater flows better downhill. Our first recommendation, as I said earlier, was to just fix the plant as it exists. Most of the plants that we have done over the years is a renovation of the existing plant. We've relocated when we have to. But we actually had approval from DEP to make this site resilient to tidal surges and the floodplain. It's not that hard to do. In terms of how much it's going to cost, the farther you build a plant away from where it is now, the more it's going to cost to pump it. And then you got to bring it back to get it out to the receiving water. So that's why the sites the town has looked at have been as close as possible to the urban area where the sewer's being generated and where the discharge is. But as far as running the plant, it's not going to change. As we get into a farther and farther and farther site, it will cost more to pump, obviously.
So, and then, Dennis and Bill, tell me if this is wrong, but I believe the situation we're in is basically, if we can't. So the cost is roughly 50 to 60 million, that's the estimate, who knows with inflation and when it actually gets built. If we don't get a certain amount of that, it's just not happening, because we know that both taxpayers and ratepayers cannot foot that much of a bill. So, I mean, that's and right now, as you cited, federal money comes and goes every day, and we don't have anything, I mean, we've got some money squirreled away at the moment, but it's nowhere near what we need to actually start.
And I think part of the frustration for people is. We understand that we could be looking at years before we get an approval. But the fact, the problem for us who own houses close by is that this location is known. It's known that it was voted on, that this is the potential site, so we are already suffering financial repercussions with our homes. And so to have that suspended indefinitely is a problem. For some of us, it's the only asset that people have, and to not even be able to sell it at fair market value is a big problem. Lots of.
Ma'am,
Jane,
Jane Johnston, I live right next door, I bought the property. And I cannot sell my house at fair market value, and I cannot make a profit. I have no choice but to either sell at a loss or stay. And quite frankly, I don't wanna stay next to a sewer plant.
Now, where do you live?
I live right on Hodge, right in the corner of the driveway.
is there another hand, sir, in the back?
Greg, I actually live the closest to the proposed site. I live on Sand Hill. If, bought the house in, March, moved in June. And I 100% guarantee you, if I knew that it was there, I'd never bought that house. And the gentleman said that, the workers that work in the plants, they don't have any sickness. Well, what do they work there, 5, 10 years? I bought this house, my wife bought this house, we were gonna retire here. It was a beautiful city, we brought our kids here, we're gonna live 50 years next to it. But what's the, how the gentlemen, people that work there, they work 5 years, they might not get sick. If I'm gonna live next to them for 50 years, who knows what's gonna go on?
but
And
also,
I'm on a well. I'm not on city water. So, and I have a pool, and my house is full of windows. We bought that house because of the pool and the windows for our kids. And if any little crack in that system, it's going right into my water. And who's gonna tell me that I'm not gonna get sick? And who's gonna know for 5, 10 years? Nobody's gonna know.
and also I would posit that. Just because you're not looking for something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because the state of Maine has not done a study of surrounding areas, the pollution, the air pollution, and they may have, you know. That's
I don't
something
know
that
the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either. But also illnesses, I don't think that we do. And again, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't do a medical history of the people who start working in a wastewater treatment plant and then track and ask them year over year, what illnesses do you have? Is this related to the wastewater treatment plant? So we can't definitively say that that's actually an accurate thing, because people get sick and we haven't studied the prevalence of one particular issue being higher in an area versus another area. And that is the concern that we're trying to bring forward, in terms of those issues.
Neil, and Kathleen.
Neil Iver, I live on Federal Street as well. Just one thing I want to reference, the gentleman handed out a picture of the Oxford plant. And I just checked, the population of Oxford's around 1,100 and change. And so we're here, I think 3,700 or something like that.
38,
And did you
37.
say that Edgecombe also uses our plant as well? Did I?
Absolutely.
Part of Edgecombe, yes.
Okay,
Davis
so
Just Davis Island.
that's another few hundred at least, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're 4,000, so we may be 4 times, so whatever plant they put in is probably gonna have to be 4 times the size of the plant that we're seeing in that picture, I'm assuming.
Also, the location of that site, I went on Google and saw that it's in a commercial Main Street.
It has residential.
Yeah.
It has residential homes right next to it, just,
I'm sorry?
it has homes right next to
It
it.
does. Okay.
Yes.
Then it's
Yeah.
show up.
And the Wyndham one is right next to a school.
Well, the other point I should make about that is that not everybody in town is connected to the wastewater system. It's a relatively small part of town, which is part of the reason why the discussion about putting everything in the collection system is in the
And they
historic
have also
area.
casino.
Is it true though that if it's 4 times as many residents using or people, that the treatment plant would have to be 4 times as big?
But it isn't the point. My point was that there isn't 4 times as many people using it. You've got a much smaller population
There's-
actually connected than the
we'll have
entire town.
810 uses of our sewer system.
We'd have to find out how many users Oxford has to compare those.
So we do have 810 users of our sewer system. That's how many bills we send out.
So not 4,000.
And I would also point out they have Oxford Casino.
But the buildings don't use the system, the people use the system. The wastewater isn't for buildings per se, it's for the sewage.
Right,
It's probably
but if you
people.
have 810 users, that's not 4,000 people.
Oh, we have 4,000 residents.
We have 4,000 residents, but very few of them are in.
Systems, sewers, all that.
But like when I lived on Langdon Road, I did not use the sewer system.
Right.
On Federal Street, across the fire,
That's
project.
But there are people further out that,
But his point is you have 810 accounts.
Right.
You might have 5 people in an account, so you technically could have 4,000 people.
but we know that we don't have 4.
You don't know what the number is.
Correct, you'd have to ask how many are
Well,
people
then, I guess you can commensurately assume that Oxford Health also has less than 11 residents. You still could be 4 times the
Yes.
amount.
You could. Kathleen and then Karen.
Okay, my question is, so you talked about the seawall, and I assume there was a cost associated with the cost of the seawall, putting the seawall?
Well, was it like
34 million, it was 35 million, I think,
It was around
but everything
35.
have to move out of basements up to higher levels of plant, it was around 35 million, I think.
So much different than 50.
Standing there.
But they were-
That was my question, where's the stop point? So if you're getting federal money for that 50 to 60 million, and who's gonna be making the determination to say, we're only gonna get 10 million federal, or whatever percentage you're gonna get, that therefore to do this bill, you're gonna have to come up with money. Where does the break even come with, oh, we might as well just do the seawall anyway?
That would be both a town and select board decision because the majority of the money has some sort of match or component that requires a town vote.
Thanks.
So that's the other piece of all this is that there are probably several more town votes that would have to happen before anything starts moving forward.
But right now, they won't give us any money for the seawall.
People who are near what has been identified as the site. We're in limbo until all that occurs, because people assume it's going there. So I guess the point that's being made by the homeowners is that anybody trying to sell a home right now is being impacted by the length of time it's gonna take to get to the point that it's a go or a no go.
Yes.
Okay, so that, I think that really sums up what everybody's feeling, that, I mean, people who are against it, if there was a decision, then you would not. But now we're in limbo, waiting, and that's probably just we don't want it anyway, because of all these other concerns, but, it really protracts period of time
I understand.
for people, so I think that that's a concern that needs to be taken into consideration and reacted to by.
And to expand on that point, if we're already seeing impact to the ability and it doesn't even exist yet, what happens when it does exist?
Oh, absolutely.
Karen?
Because I've been in a community where there was a trash, pile, and they ended up, I'm not trying to fearmonger, they ended up suing the town because their property values were impacted because that site was selected, right?
Yep.
Even though they did everything with the EPA and everybody did, they had to settle with all the homeowners because their property values were affected by it, so.
Karen and then this gentleman.
And I'm not saying that the water treatment plant should be going by the elementary school, but a statement was made that other than the elementary school, this was the best site, it was the most efficient and most cost effective. And I think you made a statement earlier that obviously elementary school is a sensitive site. What did you mean by that? Is it in the floodplain? Is it sensitive just because it's an elementary school and so politically it would be a problem?
I don't think it's sensitive, did someone else say that?
Well, regardless, why is the elementary school not being considered and the neighborhood is? And what,
Do you honestly think that that would be a better site than where we're looking now? Do you think the parents, based on what you guys are saying, would actually go along with that at this point in time?
You don't have a property value issue with the
I
elementary
mean,
school.
there's no sideline, it's close to where it is, town owns it. There's fewer property owners being affected by it, and yes, obviously, people are gonna think, oh my God, I don't wanna send my kid to a school that's, you know, water treatment plant. When they're only there 8 hours a day, and that our community lives where we live 24/7. So when we talk about. If there's nothing to worry about, then there's nothing to worry about, why isn't that site a better site? If there is something, if the politics are difficult, okay, let's be honest, it's the politics. I just wanna know why, what are the factors and what are we dealing with, and I'm not saying politics aren't real.
Bill,
Yeah, Bill, can you address that? I remember there were several reasons that didn't have anything to do with the kids exactly, that we decided that was not the best site.
Well, when DEP first changed their position that you can't fix the present plant, DEP mentioned, why don't you put it across the water at the elementary school site? And that was looked at, but we felt there was some discussion, and I agree with it, on the historical issues on Federal Street. That's a very historical street. We suspect there would be just as much opposition to putting a plant at that site as there would be at the salt shed. And right now, there's the salt shed is not a pristine site. It's a Quonset metal hut and a T111 wooden building with piles of sand and gravel, and it's off the road. I mean, I just think that we'd be having the same meeting right now. Whether or not the salt shed is the ultimate site that the town chooses, because it is the town's choice to put the treatment plant. The plant is gonna have to be relocated, or fighting with DEP and EPA to get, to put it back on Cow Island. I don't think you're gonna find that people on Federal Street are gonna support it any more than people on Sand Hill, and I understand your concern. No matter what site you pick, you're gonna have opposition. That's how it's been my entire career, so this is all, I understand, but.
But Karen, I can try to look back in my notes, there were several other things, like, I think there were some structural things that were either gonna be way more expensive, or I would have to go back and look.
Okay,
Just don't
I have
remember off the top of my head.
Sure.
Just a second.
Wasn't the elementary school the place that had a couple of water streams that were going across the property? Wasn't that?
Maybe.
I think that had a couple of, I think that the area that we were talking about, that property, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain.
Or maybe
that
the
there was-
wetlands?
Yeah, I think
Might have
there
been
were,
wetlands.
I think it
there were a couple of
was
streams.
wetlands. I think it was wetlands, but
Yeah,
there
and
are
there's
two
there's a
streams.
couple of streams that go across that, and there's
Yes, there are.
wetlands, and they said that's not a good place to put it.
Right, and there are a couple of streams that go through in proximity to the town garage as well.
Right. Which
But
is
the
why we
DEP has already evaluated that.
I'm just saying.
Which was why
Right.
we originally, I don't know who it was, but I can remember, but somebody did offer us land so that we wouldn't have to build a new public works garage, and DEP said, no, it's drainage issues, there's streams out there, you can't go there.
Yeah, sir,
Yes, John Davis, I'm at 50 Hart Street, and I'll probably possess the best view of the new plant that's going in, if it goes forward. And I am very concerned about the spending of the $50 to $60 million. What I'd like to know is, out of that, what percentage of that money is gonna fall in terms of taxes on people in Wiscasset?
And has that been looked at? Because we know you're not gonna get every penny that's you're gonna need to be able to complete it. So what is that percentage that's gonna be left over? And I have a feeling it's gonna be in the millions of dollars. So do you have an answer on that?
There's no way at this point to know what the percentage would be. I think you are right, it will be in the millions. It will probably be if we were successful in getting a lot of the funding, I would be willing to bet money that a bunch of it's gonna be either matched or partial town contribution or that type of thing, but it's impossible to know, and that's part of the reason why pretty much all of these large grants or funding opportunities require a town vote. So part of that's going to be, what does the town feel it can take, and at that point, we would try to figure out what a percentage would be in terms of what that would actually look like on a tax bill, in terms of the preparation for that vote.
Right, well, what I keep thinking about is that $50 or $60 million, let's say that we get stuck with 5-10% of that. We're talking about $6 million. My feeling is that you could go down there and put a seawall up around the outside without spending that much money. And the seawall is easily constructed. It's not a big project, and it's only needed on the riverside, not on the backside, because what you're concerned about with these storms is the tidal water that's coming in, and basically all you have to do is prevent it from going up into that area. So the thing is, it would seem to me that you could get this job done somewhere in the $3 million range to get those put up.
Unfortunately not, if we could have done that, I think we would have done that.
Well, the thing is, I'd like you to know that I played a significant part in building the seawalls down in Situate, Massachusetts. And I'm sure all of you, if you're familiar with Massachusetts, is familiar with the problems that the Situate has had to deal with for years. And slowly everything has been eaten away. We built the seawall. I designed and built the seawall with the fellow that was standing here a while ago. And it was a one-piece unit that was used to place a seawall around the Situate area. We did that 25 years ago. The seawall is still standing and it is still in place, and that could be done down there now. And basically, we could probably take care of that with the money that we would save spending the $60 million, which is a heck of a lot of money for this small town to have to deal with. So my thought is, can't we give some thought to some other approaches to this? Because this is really out of sight, trying to deal with that kind of a budget. And with this current administration that we have down there, hey, this guy's not too thrilled with our governor. And I don't think he's gonna be too thrilled to give us $40 million or whatever it is you're looking for. So I think that at this particular point, what we need to do here is start considering the other alternatives. And I'm hoping that we can start doing that after this meeting is over.
We absolutely are, and Ron and Dennis are always looking for different ways we could do this. If we could get funding enough to do the seawall, I think we would go ahead and just defy EPA and DEP and do it.
We're gonna design for the seawall.
Sir, it's not us that's holding up the seawall, it's DEP. So if you think it's a great idea, and we tried this, and we continue to try it, reach out to DEP, and all of you, reach out to DEP and say,
Yeah.
you need to reconsider your decision to deny us that opportunity, because they're the ones that saying you can't do it. And if we defy them and just go ahead and put up a seawall, they've already told us that legally, they can't force us to move this plan. We could build a seawall around it if we want to. But anytime we need to do major upgrades to that plant in 20 years, whatever it is, they're not gonna give us any money. The responsibility will fall 100% on the town.
I don't believe that you're gonna be dealing with a
Just a
different
second.
administration at that particular point, right? 25 years from now, I'm hoping 4 years from now, we'll be dealing with a different administration. And one that is more compliant and ready to work with
with, these small towns. So, I think really now is the time to start.
It's the old administration that wouldn't let us do it.
No, okay, no, we're not getting political, we're not going.
Dennis, is there
Not-
a number?
He's talking about they're doing it for,
Excuse me,
and
sir,
so.
sir, we had Kathleen was.
Florida has no different than we do about water, the rising water problem. They have bigger problems than we do it here in Maine.
Okay,
They're doing it down there. I can take it to a couple of plants.
Kathleen, were you asking
That's my point, yeah.
when we were last in touch? Didn't you just send them a letter?
I sent the EPA a letter last week saying, with the new administration and the new priorities, is there any chance that this could be reconsidered? And I sent it directly to the EPA administrator. I have not heard anything back yet.
Okay.
But it's, folks, it's not like I'm not working on this, and Rob's not working, we're working on this all the time.
So can we support you? Is there a contact that you have at the DEP or that you're trying to reach out to at the DEP that we can flood ourselves saying, you know, as concerned citizens, when we're looking at putting this in our historic district or securing what we have, because we all know, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so to speak. So could we support you by also reaching out to that same person?
I can send you some
Yeah,
contact
I think
information that you
so.
can distribute it to whoever you want.
Perfect, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Do a petition to the whole dang town.
Well, we
Seriously.
haven't started, so
Have
that's,
a petition to the whole dang town. Go
Okay.
door to door if you have to, put a push on. We don't wanna have to do what people don't want done.
perfect, because I did want to, there was a statement that was glossed over, and I just wanted to make sure that we paid attention to it, because you know, we're being pretty transparent about things that are offensive, and when we're talking about, the fact, I understand that there is the marsh or the wetlands. I didn't know that that was part of the reason that the school, area was not chosen. But for somebody to say that Federal Street essentially is more important than Hodge Street, when we have just as much historic value on, that was said, that Federal Street would be
Well, not by
more,
us.
no, not by you.
Okay, well, we wanna clarify
So you know, that
Not
was
by
out
you,
there.
not by you, online. That,
Well,
yes,
yes, it does.
Albert
Not us.
indicated that it was, there would be less controversy than there would be on Federal Street. And we're literally one street over.
No, I appreciate that, and please understand that
Yeah,
this board and Dennis did not say that comment.
agreed,
Can I
yes.
respond to that, please? May I respond? So. My point was that there would be just as much opposition on Federal Street as there is to this. That isn't, the question on the floor was, why was that site not chosen? And what I'm saying is, we didn't think it was a good site. But I also just wanna, if I could just add to the gentleman about the seawall, just to be clear, because we supported the seawall. That was our first recommendation. You can't just build it on three sides, okay? So the seawall is there to affect storm surges. But you've also got to consider that the plant itself is in a floodplain. And the 100-year flood elevation, right now, this map by FEMA, is elevation 10. That's as high as the tide should rise on a 100-year storm. And right now, the top of the tanks of the plant are 10. So you can't just build a seawall on three sides. You've got to pretty much enclose the site. There's a railroad track to consider as far as access to the plant. But you would still want to lift some of the reactors up to be, basically, if you're using federal money, you've got to be at least 3.5 feet above the 100-year floodplain on any site. So it wouldn't just be a few $1 million. I think our cost back 4 years ago was $7 million to make the site resilient. Then the rest of the money, which I think was 30 total in 2022 dollars, was to fix the aging plant. The plant's running fine, but it's aging. But I just want to be clear. But the seawall, you know, we didn't agree with DEP's position on that, and the town could fight it. If you were going to spend only your own money on this project, you could do what you wanted to on that site.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be immensely helpful if you're willing to reach out to them, because it's, the more people they hear from, the better, and we keep telling them we would rather just do a seawall and make that site resilient.
Okay,
It's the third side that he's talking about, when we can't put up a wall because of the railroad, plus you've gotta get trucks in and out of there. there are gates, Midwest, they have gates that either come down like this with rubber on the bottom and they're steel, or they slide across and they will block that. So it's feasible to do it. So it's whether people let us do it or not is the problem.
Pam and then the gentleman in the back.
Yeah.
That's all filmed then anyway.
Excuse me,
Excuse me, sir, please.
I have the floor, thank you. I would also encourage people in town to go back online and watch the, select board meetings where these discussions took place. Because all of this has been discussed, or not all, the majority of this has all been discussed during those meetings. So look up the agendas, see what the dates were when the wastewater treatment plant was being discussed. And actually watch the footage of those meetings and see what the discussion was about.
We can find it. There was one meeting in particular where we discussed site selection, which would answer all the questions about why we suggested one site over another. And I'll volunteer to look for it and perhaps we can just put it on the site, on the website, so you can find it and you don't have to look for it.
But watch the meetings, because we had these discussions. And people don't come to the meetings. If, you know, what would be really, really helpful in town is if people would look at the agendas on what's going to be discussed at the select board meetings, and when there's something at the meeting that is gonna impact your life, show up for the meeting. Be part of the discussion from the beginning.
Can I just say something to that? It's just directed what Pam does. There's something that I did that allows me to get by email, notice of the planning board, notice of the select board, notice of the order, you know, so that anyone who wants to sign up for it will get an email that says the select board is meeting, you can go here for the agenda, here for the minutes of the prior meeting. They make it very easy, but people have to take the step to do it.
If you wanna do that, if you go on the website, there are circles near the top and the one on the left says notify me, and that's where you can sign up to receive an email for select board meetings, planning board meeting, whatever you want, and then it'll automatically get sent to your email. Gentlemen, go.
I'd like to ask the guy on the computer, we got handed a photo of the Oxford wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
My wife and I have traveled all over the world. I have never seen a wastewater treatment plant stuck in the middle of woods. Every picture and every wastewater treatment plant I've seen is open air. You guys plan on taking all the trees down around it? That way if the wind blows, you can take all the toxins or whatever in the air away? Or is it all just gonna be stuck right there and not taken away?
That would be a question for Bill.
Yeah, that's what he was addressing. Bill, can you address that?
You're asking me if there'll be no tree cutting, and what, is that the question?
Basically, are we gonna clear cut the area or leave the trees that we can?
Well, I think we would leave the trees if we can, but when that site was put to us, what we did was look to see what size the reactors and buildings would be, and would it fit on the site that you have, and the answer was yes, it will. I can't, you know, without getting out there and doing, more design, we're just right now in the site assessment part of this project. We never cut trees we don't have to cut. As a matter of fact, if you're using federal money, there's a lot of concern about trees and bad habitat, so it's a factor in every project, but I can't sit here and say which tree's staying, which tree is going.
The idea would be you wouldn't be cutting trees any more than what's already been cut.
But more my point is everyone I've ever seen is open air. There's not confined three sides with trees or anything else. There, even the one in the picture, there's no trees around.
They're up
It's on
behind
a road that a wind can blow and take the smell wherever it goes.
There's no design reason why trees have to be cut around a perimeter of a wastewater treatment facility.
It is to take the smell away.
No, sir, sorry.
Are there any other ones that you know of that are in a wooded area?
In a wooded area or not in a wooded area?
In a wooded area. With people living next to it.
Yes, there are.
Okay, sir, the gentleman behind, yeah, you.
I wanted to recognize my wife
Please, she had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wonder, at what point, Lori Rousseau, at what point will the Maine State Historic Preservation Officer be involved to prepare an environmental impact statement for the historic village and the impact that this might have on the historic flavor?
So that would be part of the permitting process, right?
Actually, it's part of the environmental review process. We've already, sent a letter out, I believe, to them recently as part of the EPA funding. I take that back. We have not for this particular site. I apologize, but that would definitely happen. Some of the discussion tonight has been alluded to why the site had to be selected, and some of the funding agencies require you to do a cursory environmental review of what's going to be done there, including screening with historic preservation before you can even apply for the funding. And that was one of the deciding criteria when we were talking about trying to be more specific about a site, was to be able to get to that point. So they definitely would be contacted as a matter of course.
One of the questions that I had is typically when the town requires something, be it equipment or work done, there's either 3 estimates or an RFP that's typically done. Did this go out for other companies to come in and assess and offer their opinions? Did we have more than one assessment done?
Yes, this whole engineering process, it went out before I started working here, but it did go out as an RFP and we had several people bid on that. It's a large project, so it attracts
Yes, it
a
is.
lot of engineering interest, so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir?
Yes, Randy Capital again. We beat this health thing, beat it up pretty well. But I would like to give everybody just one small experience that I had. I sat on the board in Woolwich in the early 90s. And it came over the bathwater. There's of course, health issues are brought by, you know, data, people getting sick, you know, technology changing, different scientific studies and all this stuff. The Bath Water District, the Bath Sewer guys came over and they convinced us to spread sewer sludge on our hay fields. It was a great thing. We had a nice little bucket at the front and very little smell out of it. And it really did make the hay grow well, except it was full of PFAS. And we know how hard that genie was to put back in the world. So we don't really know down the road what's gonna happen. I mean, technology is gonna change and, you know, you beat this up now, but 10 years from now, they might discover something else. And maybe that's not the best place for it, you know, the bottom line is. Let's think more to the future, you know, what's coming, not just what's in front of our noses.
And as this moves forward, we have already talked about the fact that we're already seeing repercussions to property value or our ability to sell. So as this moves forward, let's say that this continues to be the location, will there be further discussion with property owners about compensation for the devaluation of their properties?
I have no idea. I have no idea if there's a precedent for that anywhere else.
There is something called inverse condemnation. And it's when a town does something that causes damage, and that damage can be considered loss of property value.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier about this dump that was planted near our house that I own. That we sued the town and they paid us for the reduction in our property value because they chose that site. So yes, it does, the precedent exists to do it. We had to do it through a lawsuit, but it is, there is precedent. Sure.
Thank you. Yes.
Amanda Donrich, 34 Sandhill. You had mentioned, one thing that you had talked about was the elementary school and that no parent would want to send their kid to a school next to a wastewater sewer treatment plant. But why is that okay for us?
Well, I did that in the context of this meeting tonight.
Well, if we're-
You don't want it there, so let's look at the school.
Yeah.
The parents are gonna say the same thing that you just said tonight.
But if
So-
it's okay in that location, then, I mean, I know.
We didn't-
I moved here from out of state, one of the things that was important moving to a small city was that my, what we call in Detroit, Michigan is, the city council. So having my select board stand up for me, and there's, you know, to look out for my best interest as a resident. And to care about, to feel cared about, that, you know, hey, I see this as a potential problem, you know, we wanna stand with you. There's so many articles that we've referenced in here saying, you know, there was wastewater treatment plant proposals and the city official said, we don't want that for our residents. We don't want it that close. So I, you know, you had brought that up and, you know, parents don't wanna send their kids there, but it would be right next door to me, NIMBY, not in my backyard.
We didn't turn down the elementary school site because we thought it'd be dangerous. for
No, I'm
kids.
just quoting
We're
what
just
Dennis
saying-
had said.
I know, but we're just saying, if there would be opposition to that too, there's gonna be opposition no matter where it is, although hopefully not if we could do a single, but.
I was just trying to put it in the context of the whole conversation tonight. You guys don't want it there because it's
Right.
dangerous in this. You wanna consider alternative sites, why aren't we considering the school? Because we're gonna get the same arguments that you guys are giving us here tonight. And I'm not saying they're not valid arguments, they are. I think this has been a very nice discussion. I wish more people would turn out to select board meetings and have these discussions. And I really wanna thank you all for coming, and I will, like I said, I have been fighting to keep the plant where it is. Because I think it's the best thing for the town. And I think you guys need to reach out to DEP and say, yeah, we think this is the best place to keep this, and. Cause I think the funding is actually also going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
It's coming in very small amounts, very slowly, and the costs are rising faster than we are getting funding for it. So I think, you know, that was one of the other reasons that I reached out to the EPA and said, look, if you're not gonna help us fund this at all, then just say so we can come up with plan B.
So this is an area that I don't have experience with at this point in time. If we decide to flood the DEP with requests to please let us keep it where it is, are you familiar, do people typically drop a form letter and distribute it, and then each person signs the form letter and sends it in on their own? Is it just as valuable if they're getting the same letter or if it's coming from individual people? Because not everybody feels great with the written word.
I'm gonna chime in on this, because
Yeah.
part of what I do is, I'm on, for a few years now, I've been on Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee.
Okay.
So we look at legislative documents and we decide if we're gonna be for them or against them, or neither for or against, you know how that thing goes. So, I will tell you that when you're sitting in front of a bunch of senators, so when you're sitting in front of a bunch of business people, and they have to hear you say it 753 times, they're pretty fed up with it. If you give them, this is our statement, this is why we feel this way, and you have 753 signatures on it, they're gonna pay more attention to that, in my experience.
And I will say on the legislative side, having worked for a senator. Unfortunately, not a lot of those letters are read in depth, they're read for are they for or against, and then you are a check mark on a clipboard.
Yeah.
So,
So it was,
to Pam's point, it's more about that you are all against it.
The number of signatures on that page is, and the other thing is, if I didn't just spend 3 minutes saying, I hate this, I don't want it at my house. If somebody spent enough time to sit down and carefully word what their focus is, what their concerns are. What
Yeah.
else they have found that they think could happen better, or what else can be done. And then having all of those signatures all at once in one place. So they know that you spent the time researching it, writing it up, and walking door to door and collecting those signatures. That
And I
makes a
think
bigger impact.
It's important to say that there is an alternative and this is the one that we want.
yes.
Because you're not just saying, well, we don't want it, we're saying we don't want it for a lot of reasons, and there is an alternative.
Yeah, why can't we do what we wanna do?
And I would also submit that not only to the DEP, but that we should probably send it to our state representatives as well.
Oh, absolutely, send it to the governor, send it to everybody.
Ma'am?
Is there a minimum number of days required for something like that?
For something like
For
that,
a
no, where that kind of thing comes in is if you're gonna do a petition for where there would be a revote for the town in terms of. Having voted on that would have to have a certain, I don't know the number off the top.
198.
You need 198 signatures to either rescind or do a revote on the location.
And it doesn't matter how many signatures we got, if we wrote to the, DEP.
Yeah. I would say just the more the better.
More the better.
More the better.
Yeah.
Well, because I've been canvassing and I can get names, that's not hard.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what the next step, Kate, that's what we're gonna do, is we're gonna work on that letter. And we're gonna get signatures, and we can also share the contact that Dennis was talking about, and people can also plug emails, you know, we can talk about a subject line, but we can discuss that and get that information out to people. Outside of this, so that we're not continuing to eat up people's evenings, but I do think that that's a good plan and another, because I think that's where we all wanna see it, correct? It's right where it is, let's protect that, let's not move it. So let's try to support the select board and the town manager by getting that.
So also, there are a couple of places in town that sees a lot of traffic. You go to the places that are heavily trafficked. And, what I was just asking Dennis on the side here, you know, could you do that at the community center, cause it's town property and some things get a little iffy on town property, the community center, the transfer station. And
post office.
don't tell Wayne that I'm the one that said it, but Ames Supply, cause everyone goes to Ames Supply.
Yeah.
So probably not at Reds, cause the sidewalk's crowded enough already, but, well.
I would also say that it is very important to remind the DEP that they had originally agreed to the seawall. It was the EPA that said no.
Yes.
Not DEP. DEP has people in that office who think this is a fine idea. Chances are very good, they still think it's a fine idea, but they couldn't recommend that we proceed that way because of the EPA.
Bill, could you just, because I know we met with EPA and DEP, but. Just clarify the roles here, because I think DEP actually does have more say in this than the EPA does.
EPA has delegated its authority for most things with waste treatment to the DEP.
To the DEP.
However, this issue on federal funding started with DEP, and as you remember, this was back in December of probably, God, it was like 4 or 5 years ago when it first got.
Yeah, it was either 21 or 22.
Okay, so we
22.
challenged it and said, show us where it says this, and they took it to EPA, and EPA supported DEP's position. So I would suggest, if you're gonna really fight this, to write to both agencies, and certainly through your representatives.
You know, I mean, we've been fighting with DEP over this for a while. And again, Bill, because my memory is horrible. The EPA's position was the result of an executive order, was it not, signed by President Obama several years ago? That possibly been rescinded at this point?
I'm not sure about that. It was President Biden, and it was no federal money to be used in floodplains. It was part of his climate change agenda.
Right, and just looking back at trying to remember when these meetings were, I remember we had a meeting, I think it was in January 2023 with the select board and your attorney. And that they wrote a strongly worded letter to the DEP kind of expressing the position, as Bill just mentioned, trying to, get support for sticking in the treatment plan. And the response we got back through DEP on behalf of EPA did reference that they would not fund anything or permit anything in the floodplain. And DEP does have authority to review projects. Anything we would do in a shoreline zone would have both local and state permitting involved, and sometimes federal. So we do have to make sure we navigate all of those different issues.
So Shannon, I will send you tomorrow, or you start by tomorrow, I don't know if I have that. I will get you the information on who to contact, who
Yeah.
our main contact is at DEP,
Okay.
I don't remember it off the top of my head. Flood the zone.
Okay. And perhaps if I construct a letter, if there is information I need, I could meet with somebody here to
Yeah.
gather the information,
Of course.
provide
We're
the
happy to
supporting
give you whatever you
basis.
need.
It's all public information.
Yeah,
I'm a little hard here. So what you're saying, you are going to look into the seawall possibility?
Yeah, and I would add, we've never stopped looking into it. We've never stopped looking into it, but we could use help.
Could you put a little article in the paper to that effect?
Is it
I
all
mean, I
right if we push?
had one worker that said he was gonna come by tonight to testify. The
Susan
destruction of,
Jones is listening, right?
town.
Yeah, Susan Johns is listening, so Susan Johns from the Wisconsin newspaper is listening, so I expect it to be in the
Oh,
paper.
who that is?
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
yeah, she's online.
Okay.
he's on.
Cause I tell you what, there's among the realtors now, they're saying don't buy in Wisconsin.
so we're
I don't think they're saying that generally.
That's not-
I had a realtor I talked to who's gonna come by tonight just to, to have a little dissertation about real estate values being associated with a, wastewater plant, I won't say sewerage for it. But I've done a lot of trouble around the world, and a lot of places these plants are, they're not expensive homes. They're not historic homes. They're in slums, in a lot of places.
Let's not go quite that.
I'm gonna tell you, it's a bad location to put it.
Okay.
In my opinion.
As Dennis said earlier,
Pardon?
if we are hearing that from realtors, I recommend that they contact Dennis. Because I feel like that is information that the town can also use with the DEP to say, look at the historic damage that you're going to cause if you force us to relocate there. So any time we have a realtor that says that to us, we need to make sure that they're being notified of that so that we can make our case to the bigger entities that are causing the problem.
Please
But
do.
the news, I read the headline in the newspaper, which says this town passed, relocating the plant.
Okay.
I mean,
Yes.
didn't read all of it, and so it's confusing, and it's a buzz around, not just around town, but around the state.
Okay, Dennis.
So, I wanna be very clear about this though.
Yes.
The DEP is not forcing us to use this site. Okay,
Correct.
this is the site we have chosen, because what they're gonna come back to you and say is, that was a town decision. Where
Yes.
it goes is a town decision,
Well,
not a DEP decision, as long as the site is acceptable to the DEP.
so one, I will be mindful in my wording, but two, because I feel like this is in everybody's interest and we're all shooting for the same thing, what I will probably do is send it on your way before we sign it and send it
Yeah.
to make sure that we're all saying the same thing, so
Sure.
that we're.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because while
All
yes,
there.
the town chose the site, we chose it under duress because we
Correct.
didn't want to choose another site.
Yes. Yes.
So.
Perfect.
Good enough. So the town's not really pushing it, I got the opinion that the town was pushing that site,
We had,
no other choice.
we had to make, we had to put out an option to the town to move forward with any kind of funding. We didn't want any of the sites, we wanted.
Where it is.
Well,
Neil,
I was gonna say, is it better to do it that way where you're saying, well, the town made a decision, but we really don't want that, or is it better to get the 198 votes to rescind this decision and start from kind of square one?
I think both would be the ideal.
Yeah.
Because even if you rescind the decision, we're still in the same spot in terms of you gotta find a place. And I think we would all agree that no one's going to be happy with any place other than the current one, because I'm not aware of anyone who's angry about the current one. Right? Good with the current one?
If you rescind the decision, then it would help anybody's property value. because
Correct.
Then it has to be
Then you would-
voted on.
Then you wouldn't be in limbo.
In 10 years from now, we tear the seawall down, if things don't happen over here.
So for everybody who attended and is interested in helping and signing, so that we're not taking up everybody's time, I probably have phone numbers or text message stream for some of you. There is a link there for the website that we created about this issue. In that website, there is an email address that is just for this issue. If you would like to sign the, whatever document and petition, once we have it prepared, because it is going to take time for us to prepare it. Please go to that website and give us your name and email address so that when we have it prepared, we can reach out to make contact and get that signature.
Sure, it's Susan here for that.
Yeah.
Susan John.
Okay, I was just asking Dennis if it's appropriate if we, as the town, can back this letter, because that would be just as helpful. Normally, you don't wade into things like that,
Sure.
but, so, I mean, we can do what we can to get the word out that you're doing this, in other words.
Well, and what I'd like to be able to reference in this letter is the number of times that our town officials have reached out and said, this is not what we want to do, this is not supported. And here we are saying, they're right, this is not supported.
Yeah.
And these are all the problems that are going to be caused if X, Y, and Z. Perfect. Does everybody feel content if we
Yes.
let everyone go home?
I just,
Sorry, not my job to adjourn.
I just wanna say, first, thank you, Shannon, for all the work that you have done to put together your presentation today. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you have felt heard. I hope that you will feel comfortable coming to us with further concerns. We do support what you're trying to do here, and I hope that we can prove that to you. And thank you again for being engaged, and I hope you'll continue to be, and I hope we can turn this around, because we would all love to keep it where it is.
Well, I'd like to say.
Thank you very much.
Can I just say one thing, guys? The town has a new website, okay? We touched on this before. You can sign up to receive the agendas automatically. If anybody has any trouble signing up, because you do have to create an account, but it's very simple. But if you're having trouble, call me, I'll walk you through it. All right.
Exactly the same.
No.
Yeah.
I don't have. Yeah, well, it's only.
Well, I tried to.
We got one more agenda item, so. It's, it's fine, Pam's pushing the restroom. Let's.
Great job.
Sandy, Bill, thank you.
Happy birthday.
All right, sounds good, Dennis. Thanks.
Well done. Yeah, nice job. She's pretty good. No, she's really good.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Great job. I know, I thought she was. I know, good job. I'm gonna go back for next.
I'm sorry for being so disruptive on accident.
No. I really appreciate how prepared you were and organized and.
Well, no, I was so.
Maybe I'll run for select person.
3 seats this year.
Really? I feel good. There might be something more about it. We
Well,
can
no,
Yeah, let's do that. I can do that, because it,
talk to me about it.
We all came around as a united front. I mean, that didn't start out that way.
No, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was business card.
Good night.
Okay.
Meeting.
All right, town manager's report,
Even if I had anything at this point, I would.
okay. If there's no other board business, then. Thank you.
I moved to adjourn.
He beat you.
Second.
All those in favor, adjourn
4-0.
at 8:40.
I am out of here.